When I decided to record my games video for today, I was struggling to think of a game that I really wanted to talk about because on this channel, I focus on passion and the games that I love and the memories I've had with them. And I don't really want to ever lose sight of that every time I put out a new video. So I feel like today is probably most appropriate to talk about Max Payne 3 because I stand by it alongside Titanfall 2, probably being one of the most underrated games ever made. And they both have similar release stories in a lot of ways because they were kind of doomed from the start. Titanfall, because it was released between the Infinite Warfare of Call of Duty and Battlefield 1, which was an absolute behemoth at the time. And of course, the reputation it had with regards to Titanfall 1 being a bit muddy. So that game was dead on arrival, though it developed a cult following and built over time. Max Payne 3, sort of similar, because it was developed by Rockstar Games, which I feel like a lot of people don't even know. First two weren't, but three was. And this was in 2012, I believe. And that year sticks out in particular because it was the original release year for GTA 5, which the team were also working on. And I don't need to tell you, you don't need to be a genius to know how big of an IP Grand Theft Auto is. So when it released in 2013 and the marketing push was coming in that same year Max Payne 3 was coming out, you, you can understand what happened. It got sort of swept to the wayside, which is such a shame. Such a shame because it's an IP that's been around for a lot longer. And again, like Titanfall, has had a pretty cult following over the years. And Max Payne 3 was really, in my opinion, the magnum opus of Rockstar's ability to create a shooter. I don't think they've made a game since which has had the same shooting mechanics in terms of their detail and just playability and how much fun you have whilst playing it. That's the most important thing. Max Payne 3 encapsulates all of those feelings, and it's why myself and so many others actually love it. And if you haven't played the games or you aren't really in the know on what it is mechanically based off of, it's the bullet time system. So slow motion shooting, diving, acrobatics, and firing dual wield pistols, that sort of vibe akin to a Hollywood action movie. It is. Though its tone in terms of its story is far, far from that. It's very serious, which I'll obviously get stuck into. Part of the reason the shooting was so good on top of that perfected bullet time system, which again, I'll reiterate, I'm so frustrated they haven't brought back into one of their other IPs or into a future Max Payne game. That frustrates me so much. But on top of that is the environments that they built for the campaign and for the multiplayer, which I'll also talk about briefly, is the whole world around you reacts to the chaos you create. So in these gunfights where, you're engaging with cartel members or gangsters, everything around you is impacted by your bullets. So it adds so much weight, not just to the scenario you're in, but also to every bullet you fire. And it's a little subtle difference, but it makes such an impact. And it's also just another reason why I love it. And the campaign, I remember having a little bit of backlash at the time when it came out, but I think people look back on it a lot more fondly now. But the multiplayer is something I really wanted to focus on because I have a lot of good memories with that. In particular, never really understanding when I was a kid how the bullet time system worked in multiplayer because it was slow motion, and I never really understood that. But the core mechanics of the game enable you to do so much cool things and have so many cool sort of movie-like moments organically. And I think that's a mark of a good game mechanic. I look at Baldur's Gate 3. I talked about that a few weeks ago, maybe even longer now, actually. And I talked about how good the D&D systems translate mechanically into a game and what that enables you to do within the world, because the developers have allowed so much freedom within the tools of the Dungeons and Dragons and the rule sets that when it comes over to a game system, it works so well and player has so much agency and freedom. And Max Payne 3, I think, although in a completely different genre, has a lot of similar qualities in that regard, because in the multiplayer, I vividly remember, moments watching a friend play and seeing the dolphin dive straight over someone who just fired an RPG at him, dolphin diving over the guy and then shooting him with a dual wood pistols. And watching that and going, holy shit. And I can't think of many shooters which have that sort of freedom. And I almost think in a lot of ways Rockstar have gone the other way. I think a very valid criticism of a game like Red Dead 2, as much as I love it, particularly from a story perspective, and I'm sure I'll talk about it on the channel here at some point. I feel like mechanically they confined themselves and restricted themselves a lot more and kept it very, very railroaded, I think is probably the phrase to use there. And I've heard other people talk about that Nakey Jakey, who, of course, this format I take from him, and I have to reference him again because his Red Dead Redemption 2 video brings up a lot of points, is that Rockstar really force you to play with the Lego set, is the analogy he uses. They force you to play with a specific Lego set. You do it this way, you follow the instructions, and you have a good time just the way they want you to. I feel like with Max Payne 3, the mechanics gave you a little bit more freedom to experiment with the Lego box, you know, to put different stuff together. And I think that comes to life within the multiplayer in particular, because you've got a player versus player experience. And I think looking forward with the series, there is hope, because I'd always wanted a Max Payne 4, even though in a lot of ways, you know, Max's story ended in 3. I would love to see a game, at least, at the very least, with those systems. What we can say, of course, we've known for a little while now, is although it's not Rockstar, Remedy Entertainment, who created Control, Alan Wake 1 and 2, the latter of which I'm playing through at the moment, they are remaking the originals, which is a huge opportunity for an IP which has been around for a while, so a lot of people haven't played them. That gets me very excited, and I know they've been in production for a little while now. I'm sure we'll see something on it in the coming years. Either way, I absolutely cannot wait. And with the release of those 2 games, I can only hope that Max Payne as an IP becomes a series that isn't regarded as something that's forgotten or underappreciated. You know, in the same way that Bully, I think, is in that same vein by Rockstar. As IPs, they've kind of swept under the rug and left for now to focus on, you know, understandably, the bigger money projects like Grand Theft Auto, like Red Dead Redemption. And I don't want it to be in that sort of pocket anymore. Hopefully, Remedy do those games justice. And if you haven't played 3 in particular, because that was the crux of this video, I really urge you to go play it. You can pick it up for pretty cheap. You know, you can play it on old consoles. Backwards compatibility. Listen, we have more access to games now than ever, so there is, you know, plenty of opportunity, and I urge you to try it out, and you understand why I love the shooting system in that game so much, and how they need to bring it to another game. Red Dead Redemption 2 is calling out for at least some of those systems to be brought to it, and it's a shame we didn't get it. But hopefully, in time and in the future, I will be proven wrong, and we see them come to life.